il podcast dello Strength and Conditioning italiano.
Ciao a tutti ragazzi e benvenuti in questo nuovo episodio di TSCS Podcast. Quest'oggi con me ho il piacere e l'onore di avere Jesse Wright. Thank you very much, Jesse, for being with me today. It's an absolute pleasure to see you again, if I can say, even if it's like just online, unfortunately this time. But it's been an absolute pleasure the first time, so I'm 100% sure it will be great even this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrea, and it's a pleasure to join you and this group on this podcast, and following up on all of our great conversations from our time in Milan earlier this year, right? With a lot of your colleagues. So happy to join.
Awesome. Yeah, will be an awesome conversation, and I will jump straight to the first question for our Italian listeners. If you could give us like a brief introduction about yourself, both academic and professional, for those that don't know you.
Yeah, sure. So start with the easy one. Academically, an undergraduate Bachelor of Science degree in exercise science from Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then I have a master's of high performance sport from Australian Catholic University. Professionally, background, we can just sort of work backwards. I've been working as a best title is probably high performance consultant for the last 4 years, doing a number of different projects, all tied to sports organizations and teams somehow, but in a number of different areas, some testing and assessment, some facility design, some sports technology. I've done a lot of combines, I've done a lot of workshops and those types of things. That's sort of where my consultancy work has landed. Prior to that, I spent 14 years with the Philadelphia 76ers in the NBA. 9 of those years were as the head strength and conditioning coach, and 5 were in a role titled Director of Performance Science. Prior to that, I worked in the private sector at a sports training facility with multiple centers outside in Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. We trained primarily, teenage athletes on through collegiate level and professional athletes. We had a number of strength and conditioning contracts where we ventured outside of the facility and served as different teams, strength and conditioning coaches. That's how I got introduced to the 76ers and other universities and high schools as well. The name of that facility was Summit Sports Training Center. And then prior to that, I was an American football strength coach with a couple different professional teams and some universities as well. So I worked for my internship for my degree was with the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL, and they kept me on as a part-time seasonal assistant that year. And then they sent me over to Europe. My very first time going to Europe, I was the head strength coach for the team in Barcelona, the Barcelona Dragons for NFL Europe. And then my last American football role as a head strength coach was at a small school in Long Island, New York, named Hofstra University. So I had a lot of really very high level opportunities early on, and have a lot of people to thank for those opportunities early in my career, and then settled into that basketball world and most recently my consultant work.
So may I say we can stop the podcast right here because like there's no need like to say anything more in the sense of like for 9 years in NBA and then a background in football, like not many people have that in their resume. So first of all, congratulations. It's always like
Yeah, thank you.
it's a great pleasure to have you because like you are one of the people that is really good to have a conversation with because for the way you are humble, and so it's incredible to have you on this podcast today. So thank you again.
No, I appreciate the
Um,
kind words.
Going after the topic of today podcast are mostly revolved like on how like a young SNC coach can stood out and how can like make their name like a good name in the industry. So my question is, um, how do you have any kind of suggestion and how would you think it could be like a good steps to take for a young coach to develop like a good career in strength and conditioning. So basically, what does it take to get to the highest level, and what could be the necessary steps to get there?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that many young practitioners are wondering about, right? I say this a lot, the 23-year-old version of me and you, right, that have designs on achieving what they would consider elite level presence, regardless of the country or regardless of the sport or the culture. You know, this designs and goals and aspirations to work at a professional level, or in America here, very equivalent to Division I and Power 5 conferences, or any of the elite level football or rugby or basketball organizations over in European sport. So that's a big goal for sure, and it's a multi faceted formula for sure. But I think it all starts with being the best where you currently are. I think that's the core of how it starts. And it seems sort of, we call it Captain Obvious, is a fun term to use here in America. It seems matter of fact, but you can't expect to move on or be considered at some point in the future for an elite level job, which is a very difficult position to obtain. Takes a lot of steps, but you couldn't expect to work your way up to that level if you are not actually and perceived as one of the best where you currently are right now. And that current status could be anywhere, right? To any young coach, to 21, 22, maybe 20 years old. Maybe you're in university, maybe in your very first personal training job at a commercial fitness center, and you're training general population or anything. Take all of the steps necessary to be the best you can possibly be in that role. Deliver results for your clients, connect with them, be a sought out resource from other staff to learn about training techniques and to share information and collaborate and establish yourself as a true leader in that environment, which admittedly is way shy of that big professional goal. But you've taken one step to establish yourself as the best where you are, and you're taking advantage of the opportunity that is right in front of you. And then doing that has a sneaky way of leading to bigger and better things. So an example for that person that's working in the private sector right now is maybe you are training a mother or a father of a young athlete. And they say, you know what, you've done such a good job with me. I would like you to train my young football player in Italy. And then there's one more opportunity, and you take advantage of that one, and you maximize his goals, and you help him get better and bigger, stronger, faster, injury resilient. And all of a sudden, this kid's playing football better than anybody and better than he ever has before. And that leads to an opportunity to maybe, right? And this is actually like, I'm making up this example, but this is how all of this evolves. Maybe you get an opportunity to be that kid's team's strength and conditioning coach because you've done such a good job with him, and the coach noticed, and the leaders of the team noticed. They say, you know what, we need a strength coach. We would love you because you've done such a good job with one of our players. And then you maximize that opportunity, and that leads to something more. And it's all this model where you just get a little small, maybe imperfect opportunity, and you turn it into something more. All by doing a standout job in the environment that you're currently at right now. And if you talk to any people that are working at elite levels, whatever your definition of elite is, they will probably share a similar story, something similar. Again, I just made up that example, but they'll tell you about some small, what seemed like maybe trivial or insignificant or small opportunity early in their career, and it led to something a little bit bigger because they did a good job, and they earned the right to get a higher level job from that. And then it got a little bit bigger, and then it got a little bit bigger. And all the while you're building your network, and you're doing a good job for more people that are willing to help you and bring more opportunities to you. And it just has a way of working itself out when you are pushing yourself to be the best you can possibly be at your current state, your current opportunity.
Yeah, that's I believe like this. You're right in the sense of like most of the elite level SNC coaches probably will say the same. So to take an advantage of every kind of situation that you are currently, I guess, living. The point is like some of like the people that are listening, they might say, yes, it's true, but it's still, I don't know, like for a 20 years old SNC coach, maybe it's kind of like scaring also to show their work, because there's kind of like judgment, right? There's
Hmm.
also like kind of like not being good enough, like. So what I'm trying to say is that probably I'm asking you, what do you think about like young SNC coaches that are like kind of like afraid of like expose themselves and trying to show what they're doing with the fear of being judged from somebody else in an higher position?
Sure. And that's real. And I think anyone that has stood in the role, had an opportunity to be a strength and conditioning coach, a high performance practitioner, or any industry really, once you step into that sort of decision making leadership type role, which is what being a trainer is, or a strength coach, right? You are leading that area. Um, Very familiar, right? And all of us have gone through that at some point. So first, I would say to that coach, you have company, right? There are many, many people that have felt exactly that same way. It's normal and it means you're human. And there's actually a word for it, right? Imposter syndrome, right? And that's this idea that you, in your current abilities, do not belong, that you are fooling people, that the role that you're in, you're not qualified for. And more often than not, imposter syndrome is psychological. It's not as real as people make it to be within their own thoughts and their own emotions. And it just takes just a little bit of courage and a little bit of desire, and the willingness to just get a little uncomfortable, just a little bit, not some huge sweeping change, but like we know with loading progressions, right? You just dial it up just a little bit, little 10% change, where you creep out of your comfort zone a little bit and you say, you know what? Despite me not feeling I am fully prepared for this role right now, I'd love to be farther along, but I'm not. But I'm going to go after it. And I'm going to go after this, and I'm going to again put myself out there and ask this local coach if I can run his warm-ups, right? Which might be, again, like, you're working at a commercial gym. I'm going to continue to use that example because it's familiar to people, right? A lot of people's first opportunity is just personal training somewhere at a gym. And you take that opportunity, you say, you know what, I'm not where I want to be. I would love to be working with athletes. I'd love to be training athletes in a team setting. How can I do that? How can I inch closer to that? I'm going to reach out, and even though I'm not really comfortable running team warm-ups, I'd love to have experience, but I don't. I'm going to reach out to that local club coach and I'm going to ask him if he would give me the opportunity to warm his team up before practice, right? And I'll just come twice a week. I have Tuesdays and Thursdays available at 6 p.m. I'm totally free. I could show up at that club coach's practice and I could run his warm-up. Might be very uncomfortable. Imposter syndrome sets in. I'm not ready for that opportunity. But you have to be willing to creep out of your comfort zone a little bit and have at least a little bit of confidence that you're ready for that moment. And understand you're probably going to make some mistakes. It ain't going to be perfect. No way. Everybody stumbles in those opportunities. But the second you show the courage to do it, you're going to get a little bit better. Then the next time you do it, you're going to be a little bit better. And then after 3, 4, 5 trials or so, you're going to forget that you were even worried about it. And that's how you get better. And by the way, that's exactly what we ask of athletes all the time. So for the coach that's worried about that, every single day we ask that athletes enter our weight room, right? As strength coaches, we ask them to be open-minded, right? We ask them to be coachable and to allow us to instruct them to get a little bit better every day. So now you have to hold yourself to that same standard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually true, and it's
Hmm.
kind of like funny that we aim for developing athlete, which are basically most of the time younger than the coaches itself. So like, let's say kids, for example, we are ask them to be open-minded, and most of the time we are the one closed-minded for what
Mhm.
we have to actually deliver, because we impose ourselves like the pressure of making mistakes and whatsoever. So I feel like it was a great point that you, and I thank you to bring it that up. What I would like to also like underline is the fact that most of the time, and I would like to from you to say yes or no, is that coaches that have like a great experience, great history in like great clubs, most of the time they will never be those guys that will say no, you're wrong or stuff like that. Most of the time, those people that are like criticize others, they're the same level as you. So it's difficult to find high level coaches, for example, as you are, Jesse, criticizing guys of like 25 years old trying their stuff. Like it's something that people should understand. And
Mhm.
one last thing that I would like to say is that yeah, it's true. There might be a lot of coaches ahead of you, but there are also might be a lot of coaches behind you. And the
Mhm.
fact that you expose some of your thoughts or some of your like ideas, that doesn't mean that can help those coaches that are a little behind you. So I guess that, you know, we should have like a little bit more sense of like community worldwide, in the sense of like
Mhm.
SNC community. So what do you think about it? What do you think about this concept?
No, I agree. I agree. I think our profession has come a long way, but I still believe I'll use the term not enough collaboration and lifting each other up. To your point, this is the social media example, right? If you scroll through comments below somebody's video and there's a bunch of people, why is he doing it that way? That's wrong. That's wrong. He should be doing it this way, and imposing their opinions. When once you realize there's very training, there's very little opportunity to say something is completely wrong. Some situations for sure, right?
Yeah,
But almost all training is contextual, right? And there's a
exactly.
lot of variables that would lead to a decision for a practitioner to decide on a movement pattern or a progression or a deviation from what people understand as the expected execution of a movement pattern, right? The by the book execution of it. Well, maybe there's a real reason related to that individual athlete and a profile and an assessment that was developed about that athlete, and a sound reason that no one would argue if you knew all of the details. So
Exactly.
unfortunately, our world, and I've understood that there's other industries that are worse than others. Like there are many industries that just are naturally helpful and they lift each other up, and then there's some that are wired in more like tearing people down. I've heard other industries. I've heard the nursing industry is like this in America. I'm not familiar with that industry. I've just gotten that secondhand. Um, but the tendency of many to just criticize and cast doubt on whether that person knows what they're talking about if you're putting up a social media post or even face to face, right? And you're standing out in front of somebody and you're giving a presentation about your philosophy on how to, you know, coach deceleration or something like that, and you have some people that are, kind of off on the side going, "Oh, I don't agree with that. Why is he saying that? That's wrong. That's wrong." Unfortunately, that is the sort of the reality of some people within our world. I would love to say that are fully past those mentalities, but it's probably not. I can say that in my time in the industry, it has gotten better for sure. I think people have become more helpful and more open-minded. I think it's heading in a good direction in terms of support and collaboration and open-mindedness and people understanding this contextual relevance to all training decisions. Um, but certainly not as far as it should be. I think we still have a lot of area to grow.
Got it.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit for like a young SNC coach's perspective. So, what do you think? You just briefly touched it before in the previous question, but what could be like the first 3-4 steps that a young S&C coaches could do in order to get to the highest levels possible. You already said to take advantage of all the opportunities, but if you can go a little bit further in that direction, what steps could this guy or girl take?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've in some of my other work and presentations, some of the other stuff I do, I have this three-part framework that sort of three global macro categories that a younger coach or any coach or practitioner, right? We're not just, obviously we're speaking with a strength and conditioning centric podcast, but this could apply to a physiotherapist. This could apply to a sports scientist or a registered dietitian, anybody like that. Anyone that has their goals set to work at an elite level environment down the road somewhere. The first one, without a doubt, is I title this one "What You Know," and it's all about your credentials. How have you built your knowledge base to have the education, the knowledge, the skills, the qualifications to be considered an elite level coach, right? And without a doubt, it's an undergraduate degree. Nowadays, it's probably a master's degree. And then many, many, many practitioners that have taken a PhD level approach to strength and conditioning. And for a long time, PhDs and doctorates sort of lived in the university and research setting, right? Now there's many that are working for teams, right? And have chosen that level of depth and apply it to the science of strength and conditioning. So without a doubt, advanced degrees. And then you get into the certification conversation, which could be its own podcast, right? That's a big, complicated and tricky one. Many people have their thoughts on which certifications are best and which philosophy to follow is best. We don't need to get into all of that, but recognize there's definitely, depending on your country, depending on what level you want to practice at, there are some definite like needs to have. We call those needs to have, necessities, almost mandatory to have to be considered. And then a whole world of options to get better and more technically sound. And those are nice to haves, right? They just help you grow your knowledge base and they just help you get smarter, become more capable in a number of different areas. Data science, linear speed, change of direction, carbohydrate nutrition, recovery, sleep, all of that, musculoskeletal screen, right? We know there's worlds of education out there, but that's all building the quote, what you know bucket. Okay. And that has to be at a very high level, right? Can't get that overnight. That's a slow, planned, strategic process. I get my undergraduate degree. I get my master's degree. I get my certification so I can work in the field. Maybe I do have designs on working on a PhD over the course of maybe 10 or 15 years, maybe, right? Maybe 8 or 10 if you fast track it, right? And then you're strategic about what certifications and continuing education you seek out. The second bucket, the second macro category, who you know, networking, a huge necessary factor to obtaining an elite level role somewhere down the road for two big reasons. And again, obviously my knowledge and my experience is here in America, but I'm sure it applies, in international countries as well, like Italy. I'll say this, the line to apply and get elite level strength and conditioning jobs for the high level football clubs of Italy or the high level rugby clubs, or there are many, many, many people that would love to have those opportunities to interview for those jobs. So it's difficult. And again, a lot of times those jobs aren't posted, right? They just come via word of mouth. You hear about them, right? So your network is important for two very strong reasons, necessary reasons. You want to have people in that world that tell you about the jobs when they open up, right? And then those same people, or even a larger group, that are willing to make phone calls and refer you and recommend you for those jobs. Okay, so you want to learn about the jobs early enough to apply early, because a lot of them aren't posted online, and many of them, when they do, they're not even real at that point in time because they have a whole list of candidates already. That happens a lot in America. So learn about the jobs early and then have people to recommend you and get your resume and your CV looked at, because there's a big list of people that applied. right? So you want to actually get your credentials looked at. Those are two of the big reasons. Again, networking is a big area, but those, sort of the two big reasons to focus on. And then the final piece is, how do you show? That's sort of what I titled it, but it's like, how do you demonstrate that you are worthy of being considered for an elite level role? And a lot of it is optics. A lot of it is your public profile. What have you done over the course of your career to build yourself to the status level that you can be considered for a pro? The first part of that is what we started talking about, doing a great job where you are. You've maximized all of your opportunities. You've established yourself as an elite strength coach in all of the places that you've worked at. You're the best. You've been the best where you've been, and you're sought after, right? And you recognize, if somebody calls any one of those places, they go, yes, he's been our best. Yes, you should talk to him, right? That's referrals and recommendations, all that stuff factors into the network piece. Um, some of it's social media, right? Some of it's your public profile, a strong LinkedIn page that shows that you've been places and you have high level experience. Maybe a little bit of Instagram, right? That you demonstrate a professional page that shows your philosophy. Teams are absolutely going to look people up on social media. That's the age we live in now. So when they find you, and they will find you, what do they see? Right? And have you demonstrated publicly that you are of professional and elite level caliber? For sure. And then sort of how you show also factors into if and when you do get the interviews. How do you interview? What is the whole process? When do you have people call on your behalf? The recommendations. Sports interviews are not as simple as just walking in and 1 hour later you get handed the job. You have to talk to a lot of people. You might have to talk to a lot of different departments. You might get a lot of, some in elite level, front office level people, right down to, assistants and staff, and maybe in another organization and all that. So to be familiar with that interview process and everything, and understand that it's unique to sports, also very helpful. So those are sort of the three areas that, again, it's a complex formula. If you focus on the three areas and you start chipping away at each of them, you build your knowledge base technically, build your network, right? And then start working on some of those public facing, how do you show that you belong type things. That would be the DNA of a coach that starts, preparing himself for an elite level role. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Just I would like to ask you like a tricky question. So my question is, because I'll give you a little bit of like a background, because in Italy we focus so much about the context, like not the context, sorry, the content, like of what we know.
Mhm.
But like for your perspective, which one of the three buckets that you just explained us before, it's the most important, and maybe why? If you
Uh,
if you can pick it up one,
yeah,
I know.
yeah. I think it goes in phases. I think, again, this is the first time I've been asked that question, and I think it goes in phases. I think initially, and again, think about maybe experience versus age at this point, because some people start later than others and everything. But initially, the premium should be on gathering knowledge, a wide variation of knowledge. Again, you're working on your degrees, understand the certification and continuing education opportunities out there, and fill that bucket with as much knowledge as possible. A lot of different reference points, understanding a lot of different philosophies, because as you do that more, you're going to start to build your own philosophy, and you're going to be a better coach, right? Building your technical knowledge, right? Initially, right? Early on in your quest, right? Or your path, I think that's the most important, right? And then you never stop learning, but you also are never always seeking out an undergraduate degree, right? You tick that box at some point, and then you tick the master's degree box at one point, right? And then it's, at some point, everything, you can be pretty strategic about how much continuing education you take on at one point. But early in a career, as much as you can possibly handle, right? From a budget standpoint, right? Because it costs money. We have to be thoughtful with what we commit to, and time, all of that. But front load that for sure. And then you move into the next most important. I think at that stage, you get a little later into your career, and then the networking piece is big. You haven't ignored the networking piece, because all while you're building your technical knowledge, you're doing things to make friends, right? And earn opportunities amongst higher level people that start to build your network. So you don't forget about it, but it's secondary to maybe building your, but then you put a big premium on expanding your network and making sure that you not only have a strong network, but that you've also earned the right to ask them to tell you about opportunities, to make you aware. And then the big one is the recommendation, that they're willing to make calls for you and recommend your name so that your resume gets looked at and you hopefully get the chance to interview for these elite level jobs, which are pretty exclusive. And then the third piece, how do you show? Again, I would probably always put that secondary to the first two. But that's also, again, as you're doing the other two, for sure, you want to have, again, you're just slowly building, professional online presence, right? And you have, the makings of a professional LinkedIn page, and maybe you do a little bit. Again, when I say social media, this is not about having 15,000 followers and doing dances. That's not that at all. But to have a professionally done page where someone would go there and understand your perspective on how you coach change of direction, or what environments have you worked in, what is your thought process when you're talking about recovery modalities, and a handful of videos that if somebody clicked on stuff, they wouldn't see something that you wouldn't want a potential employer to see, something embarrassing, but they would see a very good representation of you as a strength and conditioning or physiotherapist, sports scientist professional, because that's necessary. 5 years ago, I may not have said it's that important. But we live in a world now where part of the scouting, part of the interview process is going to be people, multiple people, looking up who you are online. And they need to see something professional. You may not even get past that if you don't have a strong enough social media presence. So that's important these days. So I think my answer to that is it depends on the stage of your career.
And it was a great answer. So
Mhm.
yes, that was like precisely what I was looking for.
Mhm.
So moving to the last question at this point, um, the question is regarding mentors. Like,
Mhm.
what do you think it's important, and why it's important to find a good mentor throughout a career, and what can a mentor do, and what also a mentor can't do, in a sense of like most of the time the figure of the mentor is perceived as somebody that uh, throw out all his knowledge for like for nothing in return. But I guess that someday once you started to understand people, you became friend with mentors, therefore trying to understand them also in that position. So
Yep.
what do you take?
Yeah, I've come to appreciate this topic a lot more. Again, this is things as you get deeper into your career and you look backwards and you look at the people that have helped you along the way, people that you would, people don't have 20 mentors. They can probably think of maybe two or three that were very significant, very influential in helping them in a much more meaningful way than some others, that they would stand out above maybe a smaller group of people that have helped along the way. And I come to appreciate that word a lot more now at 47 years old and looking backwards than maybe I ever did when I was first starting out, and you're young and quote dumb and you don't really think you can figure it out. You don't need people to help you guide and everything. I would use the word important. I wouldn't use the word mandatory, because there are definitely people that have succeeded without, say, like a mentor in their life. However, mentors, and I'm going to lean on a book quote here that I wrote down in anticipation, sort of preparation for our talk here. Really creative, interesting perspective from an author named John Acuff. And he has a 2015 book named called Do Over. He's got really good online presence. I want to say he's done 5 or 6 books out there. He's a good read if you pick up any one of his books. Super helpful in professional development. And he describes mentors. He actually quotes the Outcast singer Andre 3000, right?
Okay.
He talks.
Yeah.
They had a discussion on what mentors are and everything, and he quotes him in his book. And he talks about this concept of cheat codes, right? We all know, cheat codes in video games and everything. And that is a good way to describe a mentor to people, that they know all the cheat codes. They've had experience. They've been through a lot of if you use a video game analogy, right? They've played a lot of the boards. They've played the game a lot. They've been through it. They know sort of where to go. They know when to jump. They know when to fire a bullet. They know all of that stuff because they've been through it a lot. And really good mentors not only have the cheat codes, but they're willing to turn them over to you, right? And they're willing to show you how to get to the next level, because you, as a younger coach, just don't have there's no way you could have gotten that level of experience yet. You haven't played the game enough, obviously by product of how old you are and your level of experience. So a good mentor not only knows the cheat codes, but is very willing to pass it on in a meaningful way. And I think when you shape it that way, and when you perceive the mentor-mentee relationship that way, you start to realize that if I do align with a mentor, either organically, because sometimes it's not a product of like, hey, will you be my mentor? Sometimes it happens that way. But a lot of times these just organically develop out of relationships. And by the way, it doesn't always need to be some 30-year veteran to a younger coach. A lot of times really good mentors can come right alongside you, maybe in an area that they've put a little more time in studying and learning, right, than maybe you have, even though you're around the same age, as long as they're willing to teach and as long as they're willing to pass along the cheat codes that they themselves earned, right, with putting a little more time into that area. So all of that being said, there's ways you can fast track your development, right? And you can put a lot of time and effort into learning online and everything like that. And again, the technical knowledge piece, there is no shortage of opportunities to learn and get smarter. So many opportunities, online courses, books, certifications, everything. We can learn anything we want online these days. And a really motivated, young, hungry individual will spend a lot of time doing that. But the only way to really fast track experience, and even mentors can't do it to the degree that, just spending the time does. But they can pass along knowledge that they've learned. They can tell you, where are the landmines? I've been there before multiple times. You might want to consider not doing that. Or you may want to consider this approach, because I've been there and I've experienced that, and they're willing to pass along that knowledge. So when you think about it as sort of maybe the only way to fast track experience, which is next to impossible to actually fast track until you actually do it, then you're like, okay, a mentor can serve as a very good asset in my quest to be better and in my quest to get farther along and maybe achieve that elite level pro career that I desire to have that way, that I really do need someone with experience who has been there to lean on and show me the things that I'm very unaware of. And I think that's where the importance of a mentor really sort of comes in, specifically related to this topic.
Yeah, to this
Yeah.
organization. Yeah, I agree 100% with you. Also because like it's kind of like stupid, in my opinion, at least, to repeat somebody else's mistakes, especially in regards to like proper strength conditioning things. I know that is a perfect way to say in English, but so yeah, I completely agree, and I really like that cheat code quote from the singer. So that was really good. Jesse, we finished for all the questions that I planned to ask you. First of all, thank you very much. If you could give to all our listeners where they can find you, and where they can maybe also contact you in order to have like further information about like how to get in a relationship with you.
Yep. Yeah, no, thank you for that opportunity. This was an awesome conversation. I enjoy talking about these topics, so thank you for the opportunity to share. and couple different places people can find me. And I truly do welcome people to reach out in either of these forums. Balancethebar.com is my website. There, just click on contact, and that email will come directly to me. And that's just sort of a profile of my company, all geared towards helping young professionals develop interpersonally. And then I'm most present on Instagram, Jesse K Wright, JesseKWright. I get back to everyone within a day or two on direct message, and post regularly. So that's sort of the social media area that I am most active on, and LinkedIn as well, although I'm not nearly as frequent as checking those. So Instagram's definitely the best. And then a number of different resources to learn and grow in the areas that we talked about here and more. There's a free app. If you go to balancethebar.com, you can download a free app with tons of resources on professional development options for young coaches, for all coaches, really. There's a mentorship that there's information about on the website and everything. So I would welcome everyone to check all of those out and hit me up and reach out if I can answer any questions, and would love to hear from everyone.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jesse. As I said at the beginning, I was sure 100% it will be a great podcast. So thank you very much, Jesse, for your time and for being with me today with all the listeners. I will conclude with our last message. ITSCS, Società Italiana di Strength and Conditioning, be part of it.